Hi witchlings, welcome back to my channel. It's me, your local chaotic witch aunt. And today we are talking about long-term spells versus short-term spells. And I think this is almost a delineation that I feel like not a lot of people make, but I make it because whenever I am considering spell work, looking at spell work, kind of deciding what kind of spell I want to do, I'm looking at whether it needs to be a short-term spell or a long-term spell. Now I'm going to elaborate a little more on what these mean via my notes app. So when we're talking about short-term spells, I consider them to be almost like a quick boost of energy to help get a solution really quickly, to help kind of push something past the finish line or the goal point. And I use short-term spells for everything, for a burst of focus, for a burst of creativity, for a little burst of, making sure I get a job that I'm really pining after, really want. Examples of short-term spells are like a chime candle, a sigil that you use once and charge and burn for a specific intent, or protection charms that can't be recharged. I think the last one, protection charms that can't be recharged, I rarely see that. But it's up to you. I had a protection charm like that I made for my partner that broke after he used it and brought it on site to a job for the first time. So I think that's where that line of thinking was coming from, is if a protection charm breaks, I'm not necessarily going to use it again, but then again, that could have also been a spell that I had going for a long time that broke very randomly. So those are some examples of short-term spells. Chime candles are the big one that I think about when I think short-term, because they're so tiny. They can really do well for just a quick burst of energy, something short, something that may not last a while, but it'll give that burst of energy to push you over the finish line. So then what is a long-term spell? What the hell is a long-term spell? So I think of long-term spells in terms of spells that will be reworked, recharged, and continue to be in use for a long period of time. The majority of the spells that I do are this. I like to set things up and then kind of keep it going. My biggest example for long-term spells are wards. Wards are, protective barriers, protective spells that you do that you set up and then maybe you redo them every couple of months or you recharge them every couple of months. Some typical wards that I have laying around are like a return to sender ward, which is recharged by a candle. I have a coffin nail ward somewhere, a jar ward, all of these different things. And all of them are either redone or they are recharged. And so when I redo them, I may just put the sigil pieces of paper out in my yard again. I may replace the coffin nails, or I may just recharge the coffin nails using a coffin nail. That also was involved in the original spell. I also include prayer candles or candles that are worked for 9 days to be long-term, because in my little squirrel brain, 9 days is a long time. And paired with that, I think of a lot of prayers, a lot of novenas, a lot of fasting can be done and is usually done long term. I know of a friend right now who's doing a 54-day novena, and some novenas, 3 days, 6 days, 9 days. You do that in like a holy number. And we have pillar candles, and the example that I use in that is that you can set up the candle as a protective spell, draw sigils on it, everything, and then they are lit again and again over short periods of time, a little every day, to continue feeding the spell. Charm bags for long use that are recharged again and again and again. So if you're looking for charging and charming, I did a video on charging and charming jewelry. That'll be on one of these sides. And honestly, I think long-term spells are amazing when we're talking about working towards a goal, like a long-term goal, or you want something to kind of stand up to the test of time. So protective wards, protection spells, financial goals, manifestation goals. I even had like a spell that I set up in 2020 that I still rework every once in a while with like little manifestations on it, little goals on it. And I kind of re-up my goals and recharge it every once in a while. And I think within the context of providing safety to your home, I like the idea of only doing something once and then recharging it or redoing it in the exact same manner that you did the original spell in again and again. So within that, long-term spells, to me, may not necessarily last like a year, 6 months to a year. They need to be recharged, they need to be redone, but I'm doing them in the exact same manner that I did the original spell in again and again and again. Which means that I'm like I'm just like, you know how when something breaks and then it keeps breaking, I'm like putting tape over it and recaulking it over and over. That's the metaphor that you guys get for today. I feel like my metaphors have been dwindling recently, but it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. The money bowl that I did is a really great example of a long-term spell because I keep going back and reworking it every couple months. And right now it doesn't have any, like, it's looking a little janky right now because I don't have any cash. It's looking a little rough. But my money bowl is one that I revisit again and again. Some other examples of long-term spells are even some of the oils and waters that I create, I consider to be long-term spells because I'm kind of checking in on them and I'm giving them a little bit of energy every once in a while. I just kind of go through and I do that. Oh and my favorite long-term spell, of course, is my plant ward, my aloe vera. I love my aloe vera. I did almost kill it recently and it's bounced back like nobody's business. I love her for that. I've had this aloe vera as a protective ward for upwards of 2 years. She's doing great. Long-term wards are great, or long-term spells are great when you're looking at something that you want to observe the progress of. When you want it to continue to kind of grow and be able to add things into it and return to it and rework or redo it again and again and again, which is why I say they are really great for long-term goals or long-term things that you are trying to accomplish. Even like being able to use a pillar candle or a saint candle and do a novena, a 9-day prayer with the candle. You can see how the prayer is going. You can see how the spell is going. I love doing long-term spells with plants because I love being able to watch the plants grow. And with that plant growth, I am able to kind of mark points where maybe the protection ward faltered a little bit here. Did I do something to the plant or is it the ward? And that's kind of how I monitor how the spell is doing. Another way of doing that is jar spells. I have a jar that I'll take B-roll of. Jar spells, I've done protective jar spells for my house for ages, and I can always tell when they need to be redone because they'll turn a different color. They'll turn black. And I hate it. It's gross. It's disgusting. It's not fun. But it is a thing that happens. So watching the jar and kind of seeing how long it lasts. Short-term spells, like I said, I always feel like even when I do short-term spells, I consider some forms of prayer to be short-term spells. Like, hey, St. Anthony, I lost this thing, please help me find it. If I'm doing just a really short Hail Mary or anything, I consider that a short-term spell. And I guess even with long-term spells, if you're redoing them again and again, we can consider them short-term turned long-term. And I guess the delineation for me is more of a mental thing. It's more of a, how much energy do I need to put behind this? And I guess I can see it in that way, because I had plenty of spells that I was gonna do long term that ended up being short term. And I had plenty of spells that I was gonna do, short term that ended up being long term. You can do a spell and do it once and forget about it and never do it again. You can do something with a chime candle, realize it wasn't enough, then revisit it with a taper candle or a prayer candle later on. For me, it helps me understand how much energy do I need to put behind this to start off. And that amount of energy may change as I kind of look and see the effects of the spell. I'm like, this didn't do enough, or I would like to keep this going. And for me, it's just helpful. I find it helpful. I figured it'll be helpful to other people at some point too. But yeah, that's kind of my idea of a long-term versus a short-term and how we kind of, work through them. I guess everything could be long-term or short-term if you phrase it the right way. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Because I guess in my head there's always been this delineation, but is it a real delineation or is it just made up? Who knows? We'll figure it out. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. If you want, you can like, comment, subscribe, turn the bell on, but absolutely no pressure. Remember to drink water and enjoy the rest of your day. Sa benedica.